And today's session with Ronnander is about the question of how to do effective outreach as local advocates. How do we connect with the people that are around us? How do we take people that may not be aware of strong towns or aware of the local issues and actually have them hear about it in a way that actually makes sense with them or connects with them in a way that makes people not immediately antagonistic towards what Strong Towns is saying, but instead being open to it because it connects with an issue that they care about. And so Lauren has worked in journalism. She studied journalism and has worked in that field for the Leader Telegram, a local paper, as well as an arts and culture magazine called Volume 1. And then came to Strong Towns almost 3 years ago. I think it's 3 years tomorrow. And so welcome, Lauren. Why don't you take just a moment to offer a few thoughts on the theme, and then we'll go into our opening question. And maybe just one quick comment as well, that if you have questions that you want to share or insights to offer along the theme of advocating locally, do drop them in the chat. The chat is very lively. It's a very fun time in there, and you'll find different resources, and I'll try to capture those and include them in the write-up that we do afterwards on the session. And just a note also that after the first hour, then we'll go into what we call the after party. And so that's just an extra bit of time where we can chat together, talk over things. And although actually my brain is reminding me, I may have new member orientation immediately after this. No, I don't. I'm good. All right. So let's dive in and go ahead, Lauren.
I know exactly why you said Washington and not Wisconsin, because Port Washington, Wisconsin is one of the competitors in the Strongest Town contest in the first round. And I have stuttered over that one like 5 or 6 times in conversations with Strong Town staff. Port Washington, Wisconsin. But I'm out of Eau Claire. So I was really excited about this topic because I think that you guys as local advocates have superpowers when it comes to actually getting local media coverage, getting an audience, getting the word out about Strong Towns ideas, because I'm doing this from a national perspective, trying to reach local communities. And it makes me miss working more in my own community, the Chippewa Valley community, because I can remember, I know exactly who to talk to because I'm part of this place. I know what the newspaper's publication schedule looks like. I know who the reporters are because I'm reading them all the time. And that's true of you guys. You have a ton of resources available to you, and you as residents of your community have the trust of those organizations and the trust of the rest of your community because you live in the same place and you care about the same things. So yeah, I'm excited to talk more about it.
Yeah. The first question from Mary, who's joined us, Mary Matsura, asks, when we advocate in our community, do we need to let elected leaders know of our political affiliation? She says, especially in their setting when they're trying to push rules in our state that would foster more bipartisanship. There is this overlapping of local issues with maybe national and state parties and affiliations and things like that. Do you have any guidance on that? And how do we handle that from a Strong Towns approach?
It's a really interesting question. So I think that a lot of the work of Strong Towns takes place outside of a political context, because you're working with your neighbors, you're working on the ground, you're doing things that have immediate effects. And when you're it also, a lot of this takes place in kind of a conversational setting. So when you're having a conversation with your neighbor who you share like a geographic proximity with, you have to share this land with them. We have this old way of thinking that when you're at the dinner table, you don't talk about politics or religion. I don't follow that one personally. I'm too spicy for that. But if you're trying to get along with people, you focus on what you have in common rather than what the differences are between you. So most of the time, it's probably not necessary to disclose your political affiliation with the people that you're working with or the audience that you're trying to reach, especially if your highest focus is trying to accomplish the work of Strong Towns. It's probably unlikely to serve you. That's not to say lie about your political affiliation. Like, certainly you should be honest if it comes up and if people ask, but then it's probably a good opportunity to reroute the conversation to something that you share rather than something that you don't share.
Yeah,
Can
I love
I
that.
follow,
Go ahead.
can I follow up on that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Just one thing. I totally agree with you about not the rules of not having that dialogue at the table or at holidays of religion and politics. And I keep saying to my friends and family, if you can't talk about those topics with you and learn how to have conversations without them turning into bombastic arguments, I mean, that home is where you're safe, and you should be safe to express what you think and feel, right? So I tell my kids that all the time. I don't know if they follow it, but I'm with you. I wouldn't call it spicy. I call it being honest and authentic. And I wish more people wouldn't hold those categories in such, I don't know, afraid of them or reverence or whatever it is. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think you make a good point about if you're going to be bombastic about it. If that's a topic that you're really comfortable navigating calmly and incorporating it into your perspective, but not letting it dominate the conversation, then maybe it's safe to go there, especially if the person or organization that you're working with is open to it. But if you know that you're sensitive in that regard, if you know that you might have a difficult time not becoming inflamed, then having that self-knowledge and steering clear of it might be a benefit to you too.
Yeah, and I love the comment that Richard offers as well, which is that so many of the issues that we're dealing with have to do with so many factors, not just political-based agendas, and that if we don't focus on a political brand and sort of cultivating brands, that we actually are freeing up a lot of room to have a lot of other conversations. And the other thing is, Mary, I'd love to come to supper at your house because it sounds fun. And so we're going to go on to our next question from Delaney, who asks, I'm just starting a local conversation group or discussion group and need all the help with organizing I can get. What advice do you have for group leaders who are just starting up and have no community presence yet?
Delaney is involved with a local conversation that just got like a really good locally written news article about it. I don't know if Norm's going to pop the link into the chat. So Delaney is doing a really good job already of this and participating in interviews and all of that good stuff. For people who are trying to start a group in general to build a community. Oh, I also wanted to say that I went and I found the Fayetteville Strong Facebook group, which has like 140 members or something. And that's a really good start too. Look at what platforms are available to you to reach new audiences. And Facebook is a really good one because although it's becoming a little bit less of a recreational place, but communities, groups of people who share geographic proximity are still using Facebook to stay connected to their communities. So cities have Facebook presences, strong towns, local conversations have Facebook presences. You got those buy, sell, trade places, the news groups, all of those good things. So it's still a really good platform for finding people who live near you and inviting them into a conversation. But one thing that has worked really well for me when I've been doing local organizing is not to just stop with the Facebook group or the Facebook page, but to get really proactive with the people who join immediately. Don't just be passive and once people join, they're part of kind of a nebulous blob, but as a leader of a local conversation or Strong Towns organization, reach out to new people as they come on. Jet them a personal message, start a conversation about Strong Towns ideas, or start a conversation, just a friendly conversation, and develop a little bit of a relationship there. As far as organizing goes, that's gone a long way. I've met people in person based on those sorts of interactions and gotten groups together like that, and it's been a really great benefit. Other things are get really familiar with your local media landscape if you're not already. So get to know not just what papers or what radio stations, but who are the people who are involved with getting things done on those at those different organizations. Try to make introductions with local reporters. Just jet them an email, say who you are. Maybe they'll ignore it, but maybe they'll remember you when you bring them something later on, when you have news to share with them. Try to learn a little bit about the process of publications and media outlets. So for a radio station, for example, depending on the size of your community, the host might not be the person who's actually organizing interviews or inviting people on. That might be a producer. So doing a little bit deeper of a dive into the people who are getting publication things done will really benefit you. But don't stop at the Facebook group. Don't stop at the local media. Consider that not every, but a lot of businesses, a lot of city institutions, a lot of other organizations in the community also have platforms that they are using to reach their own audiences. So when you're starting out, you might not have an audience, you might not have a developed platform. But if you can strike up relationships with those organizations and entities that do have a platform that's already developed, and if you can entreat them to give you a little bit of support in that beginning, then you'll be able to use their audiences in order to start building your cause.
Yeah, I love that. It was interesting because I actually did a little bit of what you said, which is I emailed our local reporter and I offered to buy him a beer and a burger, and he still didn't take me up on it. And I thought, like, is this person human? Like, what happened? But it was a good reminder that I may have been like, actually, I don't know. I didn't want to violate any like journalistic norms, but is there anything around that where they need to be like at some distance? Or because if we think of like the way in which a local media organization, like they want to go where the story is. And Chris just shared that he did an interview with a reporter from his local newspaper, and that she is now going to, like, she's interested and she's going to show up in the next local conversations meeting. And I find that interesting because a good reporter will go to where the story is. And so in Steinbeck, Manitoba, it is now a story that there's this new group and that they're actually, speaking up in favor of things. That was the situation with our little group. We got coverage from the reporter who turned down my offer of a beer. He did write about us eventually, but part of it is I had to go to the office and say, like, here is our press release for this upcoming election. Here is our campaign. Like, basically, we created this like a description of the ideal candidate. What views should they hold in order to compare other people to them? And that's what they wrote about. And they did take that up sort of by virtue of the fact that I showed up in person to do it. So sometimes that might be an encouragement for people. You say, if you send enough emails, maybe just go to the place where you might expect them. Be gracious as well, but take that in stride. And I think that touches on this next question here, which is in communities that still have local reporters for newspapers or other media, which is a question mark in a lot of places. Do you have recommendations for effective messaging that gets coverage? Or to put it negatively, like, what were the things that groups would do that were obnoxious or sabotaging versus what can be done that's really helpful? I know I want to acknowledge that not everyone in the watching this is currently in a group, but you may be in a group and be the person providing guidance to the person that takes on the role of messenger. And so sometimes it can be like, are you sure you want to do that? What would be some of those? Are you sure you want to do that sort of things that you would have for us?
Yeah. So, and if you're a local advocate who is not part of a group, that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity to start building an audience. There's people who start blogs, write letters to the editor. There's still messaging work that can be done if you are an individual at this point. And if you start doing that work, then maybe you won't just be an individual anymore. Maybe somebody will hear it and it'll resonate with them and you'll have a new friend. So there are definitely some things that you should keep in mind when you are working with local media. One thing is publication schedules. That's super important. If you've got a daily paper that, and when I say publication schedule, I mean that different publications are producing content on different timelines. I've worked for a daily publication, I've worked for a weekly publication, and I've worked with a publication that published every 2 weeks. And the one that published every 2 weeks also had some sub publications that published annually or every 6 months or something like that. And each of those organizations could process information on a different timeline. When I was working at Volume 1 magazine, which published every 2 weeks at the time, they might have changed since then. We would get notifications from people who were organizing like 6 months before something actually came up. And that was way, 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 way too early for the work that we were doing. We might be interested in covering that, but if I received that email, and if it was so early, then I might put it in the back of my head, I might make a note, but it's really easy for those things to slip between the cracks. So our sweet spot was a month and a half ahead of the actual event. And that's when we were capable of giving a worthwhile event or organization the time and resources to produce a really good story and actually get it done. If you're working with a daily publication, then you might be able to send a press release the week before something happens. If you're working with a weekly publication, 2 weeks before might be the sweet spot. And every organization is different. So just because it is a 2-week publication doesn't mean that a month and a half is their specific sweet spot. So if you do know that you're going to organize an event or produce information that needs to be covered in the future, you might hit them up 6 months in advance and say, hey, this is coming up, and I'll reach out again. Or ask when would the right time for me to reach out and remind you about this be? Take a little bit of the work off of the journalist in that context. Another thing that could be that's going to be really, really useful is to understand what a publication is looking for in terms of what they are going to write about. They're looking for timeliness. They don't want to report on events that have already taken place necessarily. It's better to give advance notice than retrospective notice. They want to be able to tell people to go to things, or at least give people the opportunity to go to things, even if it's not an organization that does calls to action. They want to make sure that the things that they're covering have an impact on locals, that they're relevant, and they're looking for an angle, like some spice, a good story. So in terms of producing a good story, if you are hosting a bicycle rally in order to promote awareness that there are so many people in your community who use bicycles and might benefit from better development practices or cycling infrastructure, then promote that event. Send notification to the radio station or to the weekly or the daily newspaper, but do so with a story too. Like, who in your organization has someone, my mind went tragic immediately, but maybe they've lost somebody when that person was cycling and they were struck by a vehicle. That's a story that will resonate with readers, that can be written in a way that's really compelling. Or perhaps on a brighter side, maybe a 15-year-old cyclist is the person who actually made your cycling advocacy organization and accomplished something really impressive and is worthy of a profile that will also promote your event. But journalists love to hang things on a personal story about an individual with a name, with a face who they can take photos of. Send photos if you have them, because publications are always desperate for an image to accompany their story. People look at images first, then they look at headlines, and then they look at the rest of the story. Oh my gosh, I feel like I have so much about talking to local media. So Norm, interrupt me if I go too long. We went over, I have notes too. Press releases are really important to learn how to do if you are a local organizer. Oh, what types of photos? Photos of faces, photos of people attending the event. If you don't have a photo with a face in it, then it's not going to be the end of the world. It's still better than no photo, but that's what people, as they're scrolling their news feeds, that's what people are attracted to, is other people's faces. So anytime you can send a photo with a person who you can name and say, this is so and so, who is the leader of such and such, that's going to get you a lot of points. Press releases. Sorry, I got distracted by that little chat question. Learn how to do a press release. They're actually really straightforward and simple. You can Google a press release template, and you can just copy and paste it into Google Docs and edit it for your purposes. A good press release has the most important information at the very, very, very top in one sentence, one short sentence. That's not to say that you're always going to write the very, very best press release, but that's the ideal, is that the first sentence has exactly the information that a journalist or reporter needs to know in order to produce a story on it. Another characteristic is if that publication can just republish the press release, a lot of the times they do. Every year for the Strongest Town contest, I write press releases for every community that is selected to participate in the process, and send them out to local news outlets. And in that specific instance, they often just publish word for word what that press release said. So if you can get your spell check and grammar on, if you can learn a little bit about Associated Press style, that'll give you a bit of a leg up, because then they have to do less editing. So get your lead, the first sentence, everything a journalist needs to know. If they can republish it as is, that's really great. Try to keep it a page or less. Keep it really scannable. If I'm being honest, and forgive me if you're somebody who has sent a press release, I didn't read a lot of press releases that were sent to me when I worked at previous publications. I would read the subject line of the email that came. I would read, maybe if I clicked on it, I would read and I would click on it based on how good that subject line is. Then I would read the email that accompanies the press release, and then maybe I would get to the press release. So there's a lot of steps before a journalist even gets to that point. Which brings us to, when you write your press release, the next step is that you have to distribute the press release. Usually you're going to email that places, you might post it to a website, but then you've got another opportunity, and actually a higher level opportunity for context about what you are trying to get attention on. So your press release might have everything that that person needs in order to write a basic story. And then you didn't have room for that really sweet, spicy detail in the press release. That's a really good thing to include in your email itself. And again, keep those emails really short. That email is your opportunity to convince a reporter who has clicked on it to actually read the press release. So that's good for spicy details. That's good for explaining how this press release is specifically relevant to their audience, those sorts of things. And then the top level is that subject line. So tips for subject lines would probably include, you want to have as few words as possible, because remember, when you're looking at an email on your phone, that subject line's probably going to get cut off too. So what is the most interesting word about what you're trying to communicate? And can you get that in the first 4 or 5? And this is very technical and almost silly, but these are kind of tricks that are going to get you a long way. Get those interesting words up front. Start with press release sometimes, press release, and then the most interesting word, so that people know exactly what they're getting into. And if you can sum up what you are trying to communicate in one sentence, then that sentence should be your subject line or your headline, etc. Oh gosh, Norm, have I talked too long about this one?
No, that's fantastic. I love it. And I love the way that it provides that inside look into what you can expect when something gets received by a journalist or received by an editor, and they have to decide if they need to field it out. Another thing that I say with the sigh of a frustrated advocate because of my local context is guest columns are something that a lot of papers will be happy to run. Unfortunately, our editorial staff in our local paper, which is good in some ways, they'd say like, we don't run outside columns. And so I was like, oh man, because a lot of other groups actually, so we have some local conversations groups and others that have been open, given an open lane to submit guest columns and had great success with that. Another thing, the letter to the editor is more powerful than you might think it is. As well as even like call-in shows. Like I am still stunned how many people listen to AM radio, how many people listen to FM radio. Like the numbers are very considerable, even when you take like your local Facebook groups or things like that. One of the things that we've tried to do is whenever we share something with the local newspaper, give them a little bit extra, but then also post much of that same material to the Facebook page or to other things. So that way, when it pops up in the paper, which in our community, people still read, maybe because of their stance on no outside content, as a result, like it actually does get some traction. There's some great, AM radio for rural populations. It's not just for truckers on the road, it's for a whole host of people. I love Chris's comment too, that it's like applying for a job. And that is what I think maybe that, I will say this as a local conversations leader. That's one of the most difficult things is that applying for a job is really like psychologically messes with me and it's just tiring. And that's actually the reality that like a lot of advocacy work, as important as it is, does consume time, does take that extra bit of like, there's nothing automatic about it as much as I wish that there was.
Norm, forgive me. I
No,
thought of other like really small but important things regarding those contacts. I love what you're saying about writing a letter to the editor, because a column will have kind of a higher bar to entry than a letter to the editor, but a lot of places are desperate. A lot of local places are just desperate for more things to print in their paper to fill space. Which is not to say that if you get a letter to the editor accepted, that you didn't do an amazing job. But if there's an opportunity, take it. And also, great point about writing columns. Just write it. Don't ask, do you want a column? Write it, send it in, and they'll say yes or no. And if they say no, run it on your blog, post it to Facebook, just put it out somewhere else. There's no wasted effort when it comes to writing out a Strong Towns idea. I was going to say that it really helps if you give the media person who you're trying to speak with, if you give them a course of action next to. If you've ever been involved with an organization that does partnerships, then you might have received an email, hey, I would love to collaborate. Or if you're a content creator, I'd love to collaborate. And that gives them like no idea, what's that look like? What are we doing? What are you asking me for? So when you reach out to a local media contact, tell them what you're asking for. We want, when I'm doing press releases for the Crash Analysis Studio, the next one's in Richmond, this is open to a local audience for free. So please distribute this to your audiences so that they know to attend. And of course, there's some massaging and how you're going to put that together linguistically, but tell them what you want and tell them what a next step can be. So in the press release that I just put together for Richmond, I said, this is open to a local audience. If you want to talk to a local person about this, I can connect you. Let me know. So that's like a path of action that reporter or TV anchor or producer, probably more likely, or radio producer can take. Get back to the person who sent me this press release and get that next piece of information. Last thing, give every single piece of information that they need. So we talked about photos. If you've got links to more information, then give them that link just at the bottom of your email under the body so that all the important information is there, but then link to relevant articles, link to your website, link to your Facebook page, everywhere that they can find more information. If you can provide a link for, then that's good. Okay. Thank you, Norm.
No, I love that. And it prompted a great comment from Miranda as well, who said that if you are presenting at City Hall, so for any reason you have an opportunity to do that, and you can share a written presentation or materials ahead of time, provide your contact details, because local papers or local public radio or radio stations will actually like follow that up and say like, hey, by the way, you did something. Let's have you on a related topic and talk about that. Now, if we're going to shift gears a little bit into sort of the broader work that we have, not necessarily media specific, but just advocating as local enthusiasts and advocates for this, how do we translate Strongtown's ideas into the common language that around us, or plain language? Lauren is really good at this. I wrote this question because I am still trying to learn this. I was like, Lauren routinely summarizes Strongtown's articles that are 2,000-3,000 words long, and she will summarize them into these short like snippets for the emails. And I asked, like, how do you manage that? What tips do you have for that? Because if we do anything that's media related, or like messaging by email, or even Facebook posts and things like that, so oftentimes like it's easy to get caught up in the jargon and speak to an audience that we already have rather than to the one that we want. How do you handle that? How do you approach that? How much work do you put into that? Let's all of those questions.
Norm is actually really good at this. He's being humble, but he has a remarkable talent for speaking across difference. Pardon me, I'm about to sneeze, but I was nervous about this Q&A because I don't do a lot of speaking. I'm more of a writer than a speaker. But last night, my husband and I went to see a movie in the theater. We went to see 65. And I promise this is relevant. It's a science fiction, like really flat science fiction with Adam Driver. He is a humanoid person who crash lands on Earth 65 million years ago. So he has to like fight dinosaurs with his space guns and stuff. And this movie gave me a really good example of how you can speak across difference, avoid jargon and all of that stuff. He crash lands there. There's only one other survivor. She's a 9-year-old girl who doesn't speak the same language as he does. So he's speaking English and she is speaking not English. And they need to survive, and they need to hopefully get off of Earth before they are devoured by prehistoric creatures, but they don't share any language. So one of the first things that they do is they work together to discover words that they do share, or at least learn a few of each other's words. The one that they discover together is family, because she is trying to find her parents. He wants to go home to his family. So they find a word that they share, they focus on that, and it provides them with a shared vision of their future together, their survival, the time that they have to share, and the project that they're working on. And I was very excited. I was like, this is just such a good way to explain how to speak across difference. You as a person, as somebody who discusses urbanist topics, or perhaps comes to Strongtowns from deeply held convictions from a political perspective, and then you find this like non-political place, that comes with a certain use of the English language that might just sound like a foreign language to somebody who doesn't live in the same little, forgive me for using the word, bubble as you do. So if you can recognize that somebody isn't speaking the same language as you, and then identify where you do share words, even just not even like ideas, but words. What words do you share? And really focus on those words and use them to build your shared vision with somebody. So words that Strongtowns focuses on are words like resilience and safety and economic sustainability. That one's a little bit more jargony. Financial stability. Those are places that we've identified over time. I can't take credit for it because a lot of that work was done before I joined Strong Towns. We've identified over time that those ideas translate well across political difference, and they mean the same thing if you're a Democrat or a Libertarian or a Republican or wherever you fall. So that's one side of the coin, finding shared language and therefore shared vision for what you're trying to build. The other side of the coin is avoiding language that you don't share. So you might have a really clear idea of what walkability, no, that's not a good example. You might have a really good idea of what smart growth means, but that is a term that is jargony. It's affiliated with a certain political perspective. It's open to interpretation, not just between political differences, but even among smart growth advocates. It can be used in many different contexts in many different ways, and somebody can read it and have a completely different understanding of what you're trying to say than you actually have. So avoid jargony words, avoid those really technical terms that have to do with professions like engineering and planning, and take the time to really spell out what exactly you mean. If you're using the term smart growth, you mean, if you're a Strong Towns advocate, a development pattern where the investments you make can pay for themselves, where you build a street that will house businesses and homes that will produce tax revenue to pay for that infrastructure, things like that. So take that jargony term, explode it, make it way longer than you can use, and then try to shrink it back and use words that everybody's going to agree on. If you're a Mr. Rogers fan, that's something that Mr. Rogers did when he was trying to speak to children. He would consider every single word that he used, every single word. How will this make somebody feel? Maybe if you use the word parent, it will make a child who doesn't have parents feel a certain way. So maybe we use your adult. And I don't remember exactly how that fell. I think Norm asked, how long does it take to write an email, to go through that process of condensing Strong Towns ideas into short, quippy emails, social media posts? It takes a stupid amount of time. It takes a long time because it requires that kind of work and attention. But if you can master it, then you are going to be really effective. You're not going to alienate people who might be allies but disagree with you in their political aesthetic. It's really well worth it. And if you are trying to communicate with media people, if you're trying to communicate with a social media audience that you've built, or if you're trying to communicate with a different organization's audience to bring them to you, being able to master that short style of communication is going to serve you really, really well, because it's probably fair to assume that your average person, or your average person who's going to read your message, is not going to think about it really hard, is not going to, if it says something that triggers them, that triggers their political response, they're not going to put in the work to figure out what you actually meant. And also, you can assume that most people don't want to read something long. So if you can practice that discipline, get yourself in a space where you can write short and across difference, then you're going to be a really, really, really powerful local advocate.
Yeah, I love that. Lauren, that's great. I'm going to I said I was done with local conversations, but I realized I'm not, because I did want to ask also about email lists And I know that that is something that, for example, my brother-in-law, Emma Durand Wood's husband, Mitch, writes the blog Dear Winnipeg, and started out and just made a point of the only thing that he asked his readers was to sign up and subscribe and get the regular, whenever he would publish an article, that they would get notification. And the level of detail that he has on his audience is actually quite significant, of different city managers or different city staff or, elected officials or like planners or whatever it is that are, from Australia and other places that are doing it. What is the benefit of a properly managed email list? Do you have any guidance? How do you start one in a way that becomes useful? And maybe how do you make use of something like a regular newsletter or a regular cadence of emails that helps people to connect with your group?
Email is so powerful because it is very personal. It is direct to the people that you're trying to reach, but it is, for the most part, not a major imposition. So if you get a text from somebody, that might start to feel a little invasive, depending on how you feel. If you get a phone call, especially like if you're a millennial or an Xer, maybe I'm being a little biased here, but if you get a phone call, you don't want that. You don't want to talk to somebody out of the blue that you weren't expecting, but email is kind of that sweet spot. So if you can build a local email list, then you're going to have access in a very, very meaningful way. And you also have, this is one instance where you have superpowers as somebody who actually resides within the community that you're trying to reach. Because you can, I guess I should start with tools. There are a lot of different options for online tools to help you build and reach an email audience. So I have a little bit of experience with MailChimp. I think that you can set up a MailChimp relatively inexpensive, if not at least at the onset free. Orto is free for users up to a certain price. So that's MailChimp.com and Orto, ORTTO.com. Or Substack is kind of it would probably be late to say emergent, but Substack gives you the opportunity to manage a blog and manage an email list. So those are some places that you can do it. Or if you're working really, really small scale, you can just manage your own little email list with whatever spreadsheet is comfortable for you. As long as you're being careful about people's contact information, you should be respectful about that. So don't worry about starting too small with an email list. You have superpowers because you can go personally collect email addresses at an event. You can set up camp in a public space and kind of tell people about what you're about and invite them personally to learn more about what you're communicating, learn more about Strong Towns and what it can do for your community. If you have a social media platform, then that's a good place to also start collecting email addresses by asking for them. This is a place where you either want to be frequent and short, so once or twice a week, but really, really short emails and really punchy and valuable ones, or you want to be infrequent and thorough. And which tactic you take is going to depend on your organization, on your purposes, on your audience. Things to keep in mind are, it's really important that you provide value when you are in that email space. Everyone has experience getting 100 emails from that website they bought something from 10 years ago. Menards is the building supplier in the Midwest. And I think I get 3 emails from Menards every day, and none of them provide me with any value. You guys have value in spades because you're talking about a new approach to development that is going to make people's lives better. So you can what do you want to accomplish with your emails? That's a really important question that you want to answer probably before you start an email list. Like, what are you trying to accomplish for yourself, and what are you going to deliver in order to accomplish that? That might be perspective that you're writing. It might be information about ways that people can actually participate in building their community, building their town. So calls to action. And it might also, where I'm trying to go with this is, that's your opportunity to show people that they can touch this movement, show people that they can actually interact with strong towns, and be a part of it instead of just being a passive consumer on your email list. That's all the notes that I have on email lists.
Yeah, that's awesome. And a bunch of thoughts in the chat as well of just, how do you know that how many is too many? And I think that's, maybe I'll just lift up the lid at Strong Towns a little bit too. Like, we grapple with that all the time. Like, Lauren sends out 3 per week plus the digest. And we sometimes will hear from like a few people that they're like, oh, this is too many, or they're unsubscribing. And so we provided a weekly digest as an option. Now, I think a lot of the other, at a smaller level, the question is, should it be monthly? Should it be weekly? Can you keep up with weekly? I think that's maybe the biggest challenge is we have so again, speaking of our local conversations group, I was using Buffer, which is a great social media tool, in order to do social media outreach, and was like loading it up. And I was like, oh man, I've got another one. So like, why don't I do like 2 or 3 posts a day? But the trouble was there was a 10 post limit. So then I was kind of like batching a bunch of stuff, and it would all run, and it was awesome when it ran, but then it's been like crickets ever since. And that's the problem of like always monitoring how much you can handle. Oh, Mary is asking how many email addresses in one email before they go to spam. Does anyone know the answer to that question? I feel like it's a mystery. It's a lot. I think you can do quite a bit. Like, I normally don't have emails bouncing back, and I send out like, I think, is it up to 500 emails that you can do in like a blind carbon copy? Yeah, be sure to, can I tell you a story? First day on the job in the mayor's office, and Norm has to invite, I think, 500 people to the mayor's gala. And so I sent out an email to, I think, 700 people on the mayor's mailing list. And these were the people in the city of Surrey that were, the mayor at least thought deserved an invitation. And I just sent them to everybody, and it was awful. Then people started responding, being like, oh, I didn't realize I was on such a list, and I wanted to go and do bad things to them, because I was like, stop it, you're making my job even worse. And I thought I might get fired over that. So don't do that. Even if you just have 20 people don't like their email to be shared, there's spam reasons not to do that. But it is, yeah, Mary, return red notifications. That's something that you, Cyber Impact or MailChimp or Orto really helps with, because that's built in. I think there are blockers that will block some of those responses depending on your email server or platform. But at the same time, there is benefit that I'm touching on. Miranda's got a comment about a spam filter, see how it scores. The other benefit to, or another beneficial tool is the Hemingway app. So if you go to Hemingway app on, just Google it, what the Hemingway app is, it will give you a score as to how dense or difficult the writing is. And that's often one that you want to make use of. And I think, Lauren, you use that every so often. And there's Grammarly does a pretty good job of it as well. But any other tips, Lauren?
Oh gosh, break up your sentences more than you think you need to. Write sentences that are so short you think they look stupid. And it hurts to do it, especially if you are someone who writes a lot. But if you're trying to say 2 things in a sentence, write 2 sentences when it comes to emails. And make sure, like, if you're an individual person who's managing an email list, give yourself an honest analysis of if that's a project that you have the capacity to take on, because what Norm's saying about consistency is really important. Whatever cadence you establish, whether that's an email a week, an email every 2 weeks, once a month, you should honor that cadence, because your relationship with your contact list it's more personal than you think it is. And if you violate people's trust, because people who give you their email address are trusting you reluctantly or enthusiastically, however that might fall. If you violate people's trust by sending them stuff that's not valuable to them, sending them stuff that is not valuable to you either, like if it's not actually getting you engagement or not getting you action, or if you break that cadence and you drop off and don't email them for a long time, then all of those things are putting that trust that they put in you in jeopardy. It's going to threaten you with unsubscribes and worse, having people on your email list that are just not going to open it or ever unsubscribe, which will give you a false idea of how your email list is performing.
Yeah, and maybe we're going to close, I think, at that point, because we're almost at the top of the hour. But Lauren, I want to just maybe tie it all up with what you just said about like building trust, because as I think of sort of the broadest sense of the category and the topic we set for ourselves today of effective messaging for local advocates, can you just comment on like what is it to be trustworthy as a voice within the community that is arguing with good intent, with a desire to be helpful? How do we go about that? And do you have any sort of closing words for us on that theme?
Oh, just throw me a really hard, big question at the end.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Beyond just be good.
Yeah, well, do what you say you're going to do. When you're beginning to be engaged and to invite other people to be engaged too, it's not a small thing to do. It's a lot of work. It's a big commitment, and people will respond. People will start to listen to you. They'll start to look for you. They'll start to like you. They'll build a relationship with you, whether that's like a really direct personal one-on-one relationship, or whether it's like, oh, I read your emails every single time I get one, which is really moving when people say that. So when you've developed that relationship, it's just important to maintain it and to continue to be present and do what you say you're going to do. Follow through when you give information to media reporters. Respond when they respond to you. Like, I guess that it can be summed up by saying that when you become involved in your community, in your little geographic world, that's a very permanent relationship that you're building, and everything that you do contributes to the health of that relationship and subsequently the health of your community. So it's important work, but you guys as members of your community have magical superpowers. People are they're going to like you, they're going to gravitate towards you, they're going to be responsive, and your cause is going to grow faster than you expect once you get started.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great place to end on as well. So thank you so much, Lauren. I think in many ways we could take this and a throwback to our older podcast. It's the little things, but they really do matter. And to your comment too, like there's a power in just being engaged locally, caring about the place that you live, and just weighing in, because it is often sort of either a negative space or a space that almost feels like a vacuum where there's very little traction. A lot of the focus is on bigger issues that are beyond the scope of a community. And to actually say, no, let's talk about the community. Let's consider its needs carefully and advocate on that. So thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you to everybody that's joined. A reminder, we've also got the after party afterwards for those that are able to stick around. And we love this. Next week, it's going to be on propagating great designs within communities with Edward Erfurt. Edward is our Director of Community Action and a trained architect, as well as city manager over a decade, or I think I don't want to age him too prematurely, but I think I can almost say decades, and a great colleague as well. So that's next week, and then the following week I'm still scheduling into April. Chuck's next session will be at the end of April, and that will be lessons for big cities. So if you want to submit any questions, or if you have any suggestions for future office hours topics, please do pass them along. But thank you all